we will proceed to our main session, next session. We all are eager to hear Dr. Rajesh Gopal. Before he starts, before I invite him, let me briefly introduce him. Of course, he doesn't require an introduction. All in the field of tiger conservation, they know him well. But still, as a formality, I'm doing it. Dr. Rajesh Gopal is a member of Indian Forest Service of 1978 batch. And after serving in the state of Madhya Pradesh at various capacities, remarkably important among them are Field Director of Kanha Tiger Reserve, Field Director of Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve, and various other posts. He moved to the Project Tiger and he worked there as a IGF, Project Tiger, in initial days. And later on, after 2006, once it became the National Tiger Conservation Authority, he became the ADG Project Tiger and Member Secretary Project Tiger, and he retired from there. At present, he is the Secretary General Global Tiger Forum based at Delhi. Dr. Rajesh Gopal has spent more than 35 years in the Indian Forest Service, and then also he is very much active in the field of conservation, tiger conservation in the states, tiger conservation in India, and of course tiger conservation and other activities at the global level, tiger range country level. Dr. Rajesh Gopal is a well-known author as well, and his book, The Fundamentals of Wildlife Management, we consider it as a Bible of wildlife management, where he has given very systematically and scientifically the information about wildlife management. During his time, so many important decisions were taken by Government of India, Ministry of Environment and Forest, and now Climate Change, and of course NTCA. Lot many SOPs were created, creation of Special Tiger Protection Force, then double sampling method, introduction of double sampling method for counting the tiger, estimating the tiger, then providing more and more funding support to the tiger areas, tiger reserves, as well as tiger bearing areas outside tiger reserves. That was his initiatives. He used to personally pursue the things, and during his tenure from 2001, where we got only 25 tiger reserves, when he retired, we had around 47 tiger reserves. So he of course, apart from his administrative job, he worked as the ambassador, he worked as the facilitator. He tried to impress upon so many people the need of more areas under tiger conservation, more funding supported tiger conservation, more scientific management for tiger conservation, and we could implement in the field. And of course, everybody is now watching this development, and we are now proud owner of around 2,967 tigers as per last estimation. And Dr. Rajesh Gopal has one major role to play to streamline this system of monitoring, streamline the system of estimation, and of course encouraging people like us for conservation purpose. So, sir, I welcome you again, and now I request you to kindly address this audience, this webinar, and enrich us with your experience. Dr. Rajesh Gopal, sir.
Let me first start by addressing Nitin Kakotkar-ji, Sunil Liwai-ji, Dr. Bilal, yourself, and all those other officers, including Dr. Reddy, who spoke. Thank you very much for giving me this chance. I also appreciate that the Honorable Chief Minister took out time and gave a very encouraging message to mark the occasion. So I'm sure this dedicated team, passionate team, under his guidance would do a lot more on the tiger front. Now I have 3 or 4 slides so that I don't go disarray with so many information which I may be in an eager bid to convey to you may confuse you. I'll try to restrict myself, keeping the time constraint of 10 minutes perhaps I have, so that I don't bore you. So we are aware the project started, Tiger project started in Project Tiger started on the 1st of April 1973, 73 with 9 reserves, as Govekar Saab said, it is now 50 reserves. We roughly, why rough? To be precise, it's 2.3% of the country's geographical area, which is under the core buffer system of the tiger reserves. And we have quite a few milestone achievements on the tiger front. In fact, when Project Tiger was launched in the early 70s, the wildlife, our national legislation, the Wildlife Protection Act, was also came into force. So, in a way, you can say Project Tiger is sort of a role model for in situ conservation in India. So, we achieved a lot. Of course, it was a wavy but a journey of lot of learning. We learned a lot of practices evolved from the field. Officers like you, scientists like Bilal, everybody did their bit. We learned from the local people, from our frontline staff. The guidelines were evolved based on the practices, some from the past, some based on the present learning, and this evolution is still happening. I'm happy to see a lot of good things coming out from the Tiger Authority, lot of updation of the standard operating procedures, and I mean it's a transforming landscape. To cut the long story short, in India, all our states, the tiger states as well as non-tiger states, it's but natural, a country with lot of people, lot of livestock. I don't want to get into those statistics, but then we also have to support the last endangered world population of lions, and then so many elephants, now so many tigers. So then the development agenda, which is very important to us, equally important. So many things are there. How do we do it? That is the challenge. There lies a genius. So Project Tiger, lot of things happened. We are aware, most of us are aware. After the launch, there were reforms, and there used to be a committee which used to visit tiger reserves and recommend some mid course corrections. But after the Sariska episode, the real reforms were put in place, and then you have the separate chapter to the national legislation on tigers, because based on the lessons learned, it was felt that you really need a tiger agenda backed by, cushioned by multiple use area agenda, that is the inclusive people agenda. The buffers were there, but they were not in place. So these were all done, and you know all that you are implementing it now. People, many of my young colleagues here. So legal reforms, enabling provisions, and then the policy domain and the kind of administrative reforms which took place. A lot of government support, successive governments have supported center as well as states. That is why you have today the maximum number of tigers in its source areas in India. The Wildlife Institute of India was involved in a very big way. We had people like Dr. Jala, Kamar, now Dr. Bilal, Dr. Ramesh, and many others whom I might have forgotten at this juncture to recall, and other young colleagues from Wildlife Institute of India, my own service officers, seniors, as well as batchmates and juniors. It's a teamwork. So a lot of good things happen. So broadly put, the tiger philosophy is based on the tiger dynamics. Tiger dynamics, we are aware, tenurial, marking its presence, 800 to 1200 square kilometer required for a viable population. That means 20 breeding tigers. then this supports something like 65 to 70 of in a skewed sex ratio of 1:2 and all that. So having said all that, what to do now? What should be our concerns now at this juncture? The report was made public, the detailed report. I was happy to see a lot of good update about the Maharashtra. I am sure more will come. I was very happy, delighted to learn, to see the good, hear the good presentations. A lot of efforts have gone in at the state level to complement the efforts of Government of India so that you come out to do your best. So then you have those, I mean, that scheme where you can have dovetail different sectoral windows, and then for the benefit of the local people. So you provide them with a livelihood option. It's a very good Shyama Prasad Mukherjee scheme. And of course, when I visited Bor in those days, it was under Dr. Reddy. He gave us a lot of insights about this. And then, of course, we learn a lot from Sunil Limai, Kakodkar, and Govekar, of course, is one of our best officers, and we see a lot of hope in him for the near future to hold the fort on the tiger front for youngsters like Dr. Bilal and others. I mean, very passionately they are pursuing with the tiger movement biology and the updates which he gave us. Now, I won't go into the history. History is over now. So I just have a slide on what the way forward. Now, see, we have it's from 73 we have come up to 2020. Only today there was some senior scientist was making a remark in some interview. I'm not going to name or anybody. 10,000 tigers India should have and all that. See, let's be practical. It's not possible to have 10,000 tigers. Well, you put the blame on the system or you put the blame on yourself, whatever it is. We have grown. We have people. You can't expect, tiger biology, the land tenure dynamics of tiger. You also know the landscape dynamics. And if you make a postulation or a forecast or a statement forgetting all this, then it's of no use. You may be a very good man or brilliant person on knowing all about tiger, but anyway, leave it. So I think we are at the carrying capacity. Given the kind of number of people, the forest resource dependency, the kind of developmental agenda which is very important for the country, and given other things, the right burdened nature of the forest, the contours of the forest. Do you have those serial stages and all those stand dynamics today? What used to be there 100 years back? Of course, somebody said 100 years back at the turn of century, 40,000. Why not something now? But the conditions have changed. You have environmental stochasticity at places, but more than that, the human induced changes have altered the dynamics of the landscape. You can't view yourself or the tiger or anybody away from what is happening in the landscape. We are all subsets of a larger landscape which is subjected to so much pressure, and that is the dynamics. The genius now lies in how do we dovetail the tiger dynamics so that we keep a balanced population, a sustainable population of source and sink areas, so that the ecosystem services are maintained for the society. That's very important. The tiger is symbol of the well-being of the ecosystem. If we lose tiger, the ecosystem gets fractured. If there is a fractured ecosystem, if we turn out ecological dislocates, you will lose those spaces. And then the kind of arthropods and other life forms and the big mammalian life forms, there will be dislocation at the forest landscape. our rural landscape, urban landscape, then what will happen? Pandemics. I mean, it's a wake-up call, very rude wake-up call for us. The tiger conservation, the investment in tiger means not only an investment wherein you are locking up the new carbon for an adaptation for climate change, but also you are ensuring a long list of ecosystem services to the society from that forest growth, from that green patch. And for tigers to live at places C, D, E, F, other places should be intact so that the pressures don't converge on the tiger areas. So there needs to be more thinking, more discussion on this, because there are 2 or 3 things which as a manager we should be concerned about. Given the population status, it's a good thing we are having tigers now. No longer we can say that we don't have many tigers. We have tigers, quite a few. Of course, certain reserves are there where you can still stock more, but we are nearing that level. Some areas inherently can't harbor more tigers. For Dampa in Mizoram, you can't make it a competing destination for Tadoba in Maharashtra, because Dampa, all the life form, everything, most of them are body locked up in the top canopy. You don't have that kind of deer. So you can't say Dampa is 800 square kilometer. If you compare like Tadoba, it should have so many times. No, you can't. Keeping all that in mind, and also keeping, if you have a vision of actively translocating some of the surplus which are emerging out and packing these areas, still now we are not very far from that level. What do you do if you reach that level, or what should be what sort of a readiness we should be in if we are approaching somewhere close to that level? See, there comes the, of course, this I have to discuss with I'm just sharing some thoughts. They could be little wild and untamed. I need to discuss this with the National Tiger Conservation Authority and some of my colleagues and scientists in Wildlife Institute of India. We need to check the areas available. See, what we are heading towards now is, we have a lot of stakeholders, not only the local people. We are aware. There is a business groups, there are government departments, there are of course the local people, the villages. We are focusing mostly on the local people because they bear the brunt, and you have people getting killed and all those things are there. But then you see somebody sitting in Delhi maybe having an influence of a land use happening somewhere in central India. There is a stakeholders are there. The government departments have their projects, somebody has something, forest department have their working plans to implement, and then you have horticulture department in the urban space doing something. You see the ecologically sensitive zone format, the format for notification, what the ministry has brought out. It's good, very good. You have a list of those departments and the way you should have a master plan. So viewing tiger and its concerns in the coming years, you should have view the landscape and view everything as subsets of a larger landscape. For that, you need to have engagement portfolio, and that portfolio should involve not only the forest department, it should involve everyone, whosoever, whichever department is there under the steering, in the steering committee chaired by the chief minister, as provided for in the 2006 amendment to the act. Those line departments are not there just because they have to be there, but with the purpose they are there. Because anything development, whatever, everything should happen. But then the factoring in the concerns, that's one thing. So what we expect from, what quid pro quo we expect from the other department, that was the government side. What business models we can think from groups which are using the landscape. Somebody doing something near Nagpur can pay and compensate. Some that those things are there being talked about. You have compensatory disposition, forestation schemes and things like that are there. But the area thing, coming back to that, which is of concern to all of us now, is, you see, what does Tiger Dynamics say? Tiger Dynamics broadly says 800 to 1200 square kilometer of inviolate area. Teddy showed us what inviolate area means and what relocation can do, and a lot of active management principles Goveker made in his presentation. If you don't have that kind of area or inviolate, is going to empirically we decide, we have found out this will sustain a viable population, but that will happen only if you have an equal area of buffer. Because as I said, it's a species of metapopulation. For the ones which go out, where it lives in patches, small patches, we call them as metapopulation. They may be close, they may be far away, but if they are close, and that closeness is also linked to facilitate movement, and that movement is important because source areas are your areas where births exceed deaths. Sink areas are those areas where deaths exceed births. There has to be a linkage. Now, this area concern becomes a problem if you have a 700 square kilometer core with only 100 square kilometer of buffer, and that वो buffer भी एक किनारे है. Say Pilibhit, for example, in Uttar Pradesh, we are at present working there. It's a very serious problem. You have leopard problem in Aurangabad, and then the covers, those covers which are induced by human practices are more lucrative and luring. Why will if you see the resource selection function of tiger, why will tiger invest its time and energy in investing, stalking something a little inside the woodland? It's a species which can live from open, right from the road surface, metal road, lot of things which Dr. Bilal was showing. I've seen tiger. Very recently there was a WhatsApp on the circulation. एक शेर बैठा हुआ है NH7 में, वो पूरा वहां तक फिर बाद नीचे चला जाता है. Right from that kind of a substrata area to your roadside, then the scrub jungle, regular woodland, agriculture crop. उसका range देखिए, very broad. It can traverse lengths and lengths of parcels of land and lot of issues proper. So जहाँ पे आपका, wherever your outer area is less but the core is very productive, there you have to take into consideration, treat that area, the biological carrying capacity तो बहुत होगा. For an 800 square kilometer area, it may, as per the regression equation, the carrying capacity may yield, for example, really be 72 tigers. But in the sex ratio, whatever it is, there are good regression relations we worked out. But are you ready to host that 72? That is exactly what is happening in many of our places, because that 72 certainly has to move. The surplus has to move. The metapopulation dictates that is tiger biology. So what should be done? The thing is, you have to view that 700 square kilometer area as an area using a reducing factor, which can only support 22 tigers. There's a formula. I won't bore you with all that. This reduction is very important as we do in forestry when we do yield regulation, because I'm not saying you should stop the biological productivity. That will happen. वो 70 tiger तो रखेगा ही. But when the suburbs reach a particular threshold, you have to be alert. That alert means you should be in readiness, number one, to pick them, put them in situ enclosures, rewild them if necessary to remove the conditioning, pick up the NTCA SOP, in advance keep some areas in readiness. That is one. Then that is an active management. And there also you have to put a collar and see whether it doesn't go to एक तो अभी दिखाया था जो tiger आ गया वापस and all that, and Dr. Bilal of course has brought a lot of reports. I have read through many of them, and there are other issues also. Passively also you can bring in through the habitat certain interventions you can do so that the carrying capacity is not given a push. It is kept at a level which is manageable. So these are some of the things. The detailed thing, I'm not taking a Coimbatore class here, so don't worry. I won't get into the formula and other things. These were some thoughts which came to my mind. And of course, there are issues like we have reached a stage, now you have learnt a lot, you have done a lot. Consolidating a source area, some good things can be picked up. एक पहाड़ में कितने वर्ग किलोमीटर में एक कैंप चाहिए? For some plain area, how many square kilometer can be perambulated by an average forest guard? What norms should be there? These normatives are very important for protection. How many square for a normal cruising radius animal? What should be the ideal thing for designing a water hole? These basics norms can be worked out, and then habitat related norms, protection related norms, security plans. Apart from the tiger conservation plan, there are special threats in pockets, which are very specific to some areas. What could be that? What sort of listening? What sort of an intelligence gathering? What sort of prosecution is happening, and what is the conviction rate? These norms, based on the experience so far, can be worked out. And then the one which I just touched upon, those fine-tuning carrier interventions which can keep the carrying capacity, the sigmoidal curve little below. And then of course the research, the movement ecology, the landscape ecology, the altered states, the how to mimic the forestry practices, so that in regular divisions, the Brahmapuri and all that, if these animals are there, source population is there, then they should, what sort of interventions, forestry interventions can happen, so that you just don't boost them, but you retain them, so that they are not lured to move out and constrained to move out. Such things can be thought out. See, in British, when we said that, I don't remember the name of the document, but it was a practice earlier to retain 30% forest cover at least minimum in as woodland in areas which are not forests or which are doesn't have a protection. That was the norm in UK. Now they have changed it. So you need those green spaces. Then the landscape level engagement, multi-stakeholder engagement, conservation development would be taken care of. The smart green infrastructure, how to have mitigations. What is it? Okay, you have to have a rail, please go ahead, but give the best mitigation. NH7 is a case in point. Though we were critical, I myself was critical at that time. I was not interested in that mitigation. I was suggesting alternate route, but that could not happen. But I was happy to see that they have used, very good structures, and animals are passing. Twice I have seen that. So at least something like that, we can't economize on those prescriptions. Then the host community driven tourism and the business models which can be thought of, which are very specific to states, and then certain go and no go areas, whether we like or we don't like. Every area can't be sacrificed. Some go, no go has to be there. And the centrality of ecosystem services should be there for all planning purposes. And so that we prevent insularization. So friends, thank you so much. I have many things to say, but you'll get bored, and this is not the occasion. So it was great interacting with you, speaking to you, and I'm thankful to the PCCF and Chief Wildlife Warden Nitin Kakotkar, the PCCF Sunil Limai ji, and senior officers like Govekar and others from the Forest Department, and of course my dear friend Bilal and other scientists who gave their valuable inputs. My best wishes. Thank you.